Welcome to the Own It Powercast, the place to be when you get serious about making big changes and accelerating growth in your life and in your relationships. Finally create the life you've always wanted, living life on your own terms. Learn how to take your fear and turn it into powerful choices that will create sustained change. Now your host, Mary Baker.
Hey everyone, welcome back to the Own It Powercast, the place to come to get what you need to move yourself forward. Hey, it's Mary Baker and welcome to episode 209, From the Vault. Episode 170, Confidence Means Getting Honest and Keeping Honest. Well, welcome back to this month. As you know, we're going to be featuring some of your favorite episodes from the show, namely around assertiveness. Well, in this next episode from the Vault, we get into how in order to be more confident, we need to first get some things straight with ourselves. We talk about taking accountability for our communication and our behavior in our relationships and with ourselves. We look at the importance of our beliefs, our communication patterns, and our behavior. And I think more importantly, we talked about grabbing some humility and swallowing our pride, maybe, and seeking guidance from a coach, maybe joining a supportive community with like-minded people, and really taking stock of our progress. I think if we implement some of these actions, we can really enhance our self-concept and how we interact with other people. Before we get to the episode, I just want to reinforce this idea and say, those of you in the group who are participating in the Facebook Lives, I love to see you grow. This is amazing. If you're not in that group, hit the show notes and go ahead and join it. I'm doing Facebook Lives for about a half an hour every Wednesday night at 7 p.m. Eastern. And it's a place where we can talk about this stuff like we talk about on the show, but you can get in on the process. All right, so let's get to our episode from the Vault. Here is 170. Hey, it's Mary Baker. Welcome to episode 170. Confidence Means Getting Honest and Keeping Honest. Well, welcome back to our month dedicated to creating confidence and or regaining it if that's what we need to do. Since confidence, I think, is so foundational to our well-being and every relationship we have, it's an important aspect of assertiveness and healthy relationships. One of the aspects of feeling and being confident, I think, is being gut-level honest with ourselves about who we really are, what we are choosing, and where we are going, and do our insides match our outsides? In essence, it's about making friends with reality, as I say, because denial, rationalization, and avoidance will only serve to harm our self-esteem, not bolster it, and can do harm to our relationships, both business and personal. So the big thing is honesty and accountability. Last week, we looked at how well you listen to your inner voice. And this week, I want to have you set your gaze upon the outer ways you express your voice, how you express your confidence, your belief in yourself, your beliefs about the world, and your beliefs about others. Because essentially, we want to match the two. You often hear me say, so our insides can match our outsides, so we can feel congruent and therefore feel good about ourselves. Not doing this, like we've talked about often on the show, can create a lot of anxiety, even just a low-level hum that you deal with day in, day out. I don't think we cannot have anxiety when we're not being honest, when we're not facing ourselves in this case, and not presenting our real truth out there. So essentially, it takes a lot of energy to not be who we really are, to not say what we really think and need and feel, to not take care of ourselves in our relationships. One of the first areas of accountability I want you to take a look at is your beliefs. Causal reality is what I call it. And the causal reality test is how much you are in touch with how you might be responsible for your communication, your behavior, and essentially what happens in your life. I truly believe that if we don't look at this and get shit straight with ourselves, we cannot be genuine or authentic because we're not being honest. Not with us and not with them. So your beliefs are a big deal because they're driving the bus of all of your choices and behaviors. Here are some examples, but not the only ones, and I want you to take this and run with it if you can. First one you might want to ask yourself is, do you believe you're responsible for others? Are you responsible for their feelings and your reactions when, in a healthy way, you tell them what you need, for example? Or when you tell them no? Do you feel responsible for loved ones' behaviors and choices, especially if those are your kids? Do you look at your part and believe detaching from their caca is healthy instead? And to allow them to have the bennies and consequences of their choices per se? Or do you think you should have control over all the above, which we all would love to have? But we don't. And that's the thing. Control is an illusion and very much fear-based. But when we operate in a fear-based manner, typically because we grew up with people who couldn't be trusted, we were let down in very big ways, emotionally, psychologically, maybe even physically, where a parent didn't show up to your game, didn't come home in time to put you to bed, that kind of thing. So can you let go and trust it's all going to be okay in the end, no matter what? Can you let go of control those outcomes? Do you believe people should be trusted, period? Like we just talked about. Do you believe you can trust yourself? And guys, that's why this congruence of our insides matching our outsides is so important, because without it, we cannot have genuine self-trust. How could we? And if you don't trust yourself, it's going to be really hard to feel confident in your relationships. Another huge area of how we use our voice out there, the most obvious one, is communication. So today I want to look at accountability around how we really communicate. And that means taking time and making the effort to really observe yourself as a third party. Boy, if you saw yourself on video, that would really show you, wouldn't it? But how do you talk about things, really? The two extremes are, one is from a victim stance. For example, saying things like, I can't believe you don't trust me. Or it's no big deal, or you're too sensitive. Kind of defensive and gaslighty is what I call it. Trying to convince the other person that they're wrong. You didn't do that thing. You didn't let them down. You weren't late the last 3 times. You didn't overpromise and underdeliver, even though you wanted to deliver. So as long as you can talk them out of the truth, you don't have to own it and feel that overwhelming sense of shame and guilt. Versus confident, saying things like, oh man, I realize I've hurt you and I've lost your trust around this. And I know it's on me to earn it back. In other words, being able yourself to, after first getting through the shock and the shame and the guilt that comes up and comes over you, telling them, look, even if it's after the fact, I realize that it's the fact that I don't want to accept this. Maybe I didn't want to admit, maybe I didn't want to see that things weren't okay. So accountability. How do your conversations usually go and with whom? Because you also, of course, need to look at the healthiness of the other person. Typically, it's 50% your stuff, 50% theirs. Not always. Someone could come up to you and be extremely unhealthy and your side of the street's completely clean. But usually, there are things we can always improve on. So, how do your conversations usually go? Are they calm for the most part? Are they emotionally connected with the other person? Do they feel meaningful? Do they feel good on average? Is there vulnerability? Is each person owning what they think, feel, need, do, and choose? I encourage you to take this week and pay close attention to your words, for starters. What words are you using and why? What is your intention with what you say? We really have to look at that. Like, what outcome are you secretly hoping for? Like, maybe you want them to think you are blank. You want them to see your point. You want them to feel sorry for you, let you off the hook, give you a pass, blow it off, love you anyway, think you're perfect. I could go on. You have your own list, I'm sure. Looking at your words, looking at how you use your words, how you approach a person. What happens when they ask you a question? Do you immediately get defensive? There are a million facets to communication. I encourage you, so that you don't become overwhelmed, jot down a few things that you know you struggle with. So let's say you struggle with getting defensive and being vulnerable. I mentioned those two together because they kind of go hand in hand, okay? Getting defensive, the fear that you're not good enough. So you're going to work on that first. You may work with a coach to look at what's underneath of that for you, and I would encourage you to do that. You're going to read about it. What creates defensiveness for somebody? How did yours get created? Like, what's going on with that? What are you not feeling great about yourself about is, in essence, the core issue there. Working on those things is going to help you get less defensive. So you work on that, you get it into a healthier place, and then you go to number 2 on your list. And then you feel more confident to become more vulnerable in your communication. When I work with relationships and when I work with individuals, I rarely start working with them on vulnerability because they don't feel safe enough yet. They don't feel enough confidence yet. They don't even know how to set boundaries yet in their relationship. So vulnerability comes later at the appropriate time. And finally, what fears are you defending against admitting to yourself? That you might feel judged, so you don't say what you truly feel. You're afraid to hurt their feelings, or God forbid, let them know what you really think. Being authentic means being who we are, no matter who's in front of us, appropriately, right? Like, we're not going to just share our truth when it could feel abusive to them at that moment. We pick and choose who we share it with. We share it with safe people, and we do it in a grounded space. We use I statements, and then we let go of the outcome. So communication. It's a big piece for you to start looking at. Don't worry if you start with one thing and get that in a healthier place, the next thing's going to hit your radar around your communication. It's always helpful to observe communication too, like when you're watching a show or you're observing people at work or in your home or in the store. Just notice how people talk. Pick up on things, like you're trying to get into character, so to speak, so you're really, really studying how people talk. The next area we want to look at in terms of confidence and accountability is our behavior. Now, I'm going to narrow it down because we could talk about behavior all day and not finish. What I'm looking at here is your emotionally acted out behavior, perhaps. Is your behavior passive-aggressive in any way? And you know what I'm talking about. Like the big sigh, saying fine, and stomping away or being short with them, instead of standing there and saying, I'm really sorry. I'm really upset by what you said. Let me go think about it and we can talk later. When we act like a 5-year-old, when we swallow our feelings, when we act out our stuff, like getting upset about stupid things, a disproportionate emotional response to what's going on in front of you is a good clue. We are going against ourselves. We're not creating confidence. We're not getting honest with ourselves. The first key is getting really honest. Like, what are you getting ready to do and why? Now, of course, after the first 2 seconds of stomping away, you're like, There, I'll show you. You feel that nanosecond of power? That's not power, that's control, by the way. Because immediately then you start feeling guilty and ashamed that you even resorted to the I'll show you to get your power back. And if you're not feeling that yet, you will as you work on this. You're going to become a little disgusted with how you handle things in an unhealthy way, which is a good thing. And again, you hear me say all the time, I don't want you to be hard on yourself. You learned that from somewhere, sweetheart. Someone taught you that behavior. Then you adopted it as a survival skill. Of course you did. So is your behavior reactive, right? Is it passive aggressive or is it assertive? Refer to the episodes previously done on assertiveness in case you need more info. And we'll continue to do more after this one too. Like when you're feeling upset or frustrated with someone, how do you handle it? Really? Like outside of a trauma. I'm not talking about trauma. But just like normal bullshit. Like, do you say, what's this? Did you really forget your appointment? You say to your partner. That really screams immaturity and reactivity, guys. Instead, take a breath, maybe walk away for a minute, and own it, and say, I'm really frustrated that this keeps happening. Can we talk about how you can rectify this? Do you see the detachment? Owning their feelings in a vulnerable way? And the boundary. I need you to fix this is the boundary. So the feelings are owned and a need is asked to be met calmly. In saying that, I told you about me, right? I didn't tell you about you, how you suck and you should change and all that stuff. I just said, hey, I'm really frustrated this keeps happening. That's about me. Ball goes to you. You can decide to do whatever you want around my feelings. You could care about them or not. Passive aggressive would be, fine, okay, whatever, and walk away. By the way, that's co-signing it, guys. They're going to keep doing it because you're essentially saying, I'm pissed, but it's okay, keep doing it. So then we become part of the problem anyway, and we don't feel good. Nothing can be resolved between two people, I don't think, unless there is vulnerability. There are I statements, there are needs, and there are boundaries communicated. So to test this and to gain some accountability in your life, I want you to think over your recent past interactions. Try to write them down if you can, just the gist. Even just a few minutes of describing an interaction can show you a hell of a lot about you and them. Ask safe loved ones to evaluate your communication, just in general. Now, make sure you choose people who are healthier, right? Who don't believe passive-aggressive behavior is where the power lies. The safe people, how do they feel when they interact with you, especially when you're struggling, right? You had a stressful day, you're mad at yourself, shit happens. That's when we regress under stress. Ask them to gently tell you, how is it really? And be prepared for the answers. And don't let shame swallow you. I'm sure if you looked at the answers, they're going to make sense. You already kind of know. And that's okay. That means you can change it. Can't change anything until we get honest about what needs to be changed. Speaking of boundaries, how are your boundaries around what we call here on the show the chaos? You know, when you let drama in your life. Maybe when you rescue others from their own struggle to look at reality because you can't accept the reality about them. You see that parallel process we talk about. So here's the test. How much stress is in your daily life right now? What are the origins of each situation? Here's where you do the dominoes. Like, is it due to something out of your control, like completely out of the blue? And that's different. Okay, set that aside. Or is it the causal reality piece where, one, it could have been prevented if things weren't being avoided? Like maybe telling someone the truth in the beginning. Or telling them the whole truth in the beginning and not leaving out parts that look really bad. Admitting where you screwed up early on. paying that bill on time, taking time to manage your time so things don't blow up and you don't forget appointments, saying no to people and things and saying no to yourself. You know who you are, those loving people out there who pile too much on your plate. Maybe some of the chaos could have been mitigated with your boundaries you haven't set and or are afraid to set. Oh, that can guarantee chaos in our life because we're not saying no. We're not asking people to help us. So there's just too much chaos. There's too much going on. It can't get done in 24/7. If you're doing all the housework, all the cooking, all the managing, and you work full time, how are you going to do that? Maybe the causal reality piece is with friends and loved ones. If you ask them, if they gut level with you, what would they say as to this pattern in your life? Is there often chaos? If they really got honest, what would they tell you? And finally, one of the things that you can do is get a coach, because a coach can help you identify where you need to do some work in this area and can partner with you to create a plan of action and tackle it. Without someone to check in with regularly who will lovingly ask how it's going for us, you know we can easily slide back into old behaviors. Because life gets busy, we focus elsewhere, we get distracted. We get scared, we'd rather avoid it if we were honest. Having someone to check in with keeps us focused and can help us stay on task. The other thing we can do is to keep reading, keep learning, grab all the good stuff you can to help you identify if what you're doing is healthy or unhealthy. We have to get clear about this first, like what is really healthy communication, for example. What's snarky and sarcastic and passive aggressive? Because how are you going to evaluate how you do if you don't know what is unhealthy first? And finally, try to join a group of like-minded folks, even if it's online, who cares? Those people would also be working on becoming more empowered like you, working on healthier communication, working on being honest with themselves. And not only, hopefully, can you share openly about your progress, you can learn from them as well, watching their journey. You know, adults do best with pure learning. It's very powerful stuff. Listening to your inner voice while monitoring your outer one is so important if you want to continue to feel more grounded and authentic. The more we own our communication, our behavior, and what is really driving said behavior, the more healthy control we exert over our choices of how we want to interact with others. So today we talked about how in order to be more confident, we need to grab accountability for our communication and our behavior in our relationships. We focused on ways to assess how healthy you are today around your beliefs, your communication, and your behavior. By getting a coach, joining a group, and writing down your findings, you can begin immediately to make things better in this area. That's what I love about it. Okay, so there you go, a conversation about how important getting gut level honest with ourselves is if we want to believe in ourselves and feel more confident. One of the biggest ways is becoming more open and teachable, which sounds great, but can be hard to do if you're already hard on yourself because you might think that you need to have the answers already, that you shouldn't, quote unquote, need any help, that it's hard to be vulnerable and trust others to truly help you in healthy ways without their own agenda. Those are a few of the top reasons why we can hesitate to ask for help. But we need other people to help us do this hard work of getting it together. We need the love, support, and the accountability so we don't give in and we don't give up and we keep going until we see some fruit. I think when we're open to learning and growing and changing, the possibilities are endless and life gets so much better. Thank you so much for being here today. I hope you walked away with something that you can use. If you need support, I have a few openings right now for coaching clients. Know that you can trust that if you work with me, you're going to be doing some great work and you're going to see some progress. All right, pay it forward, keep focusing on you, and I'll see you next time.
We hope you took away some useful insights and tools you could begin using right away. If you did, please leave a positive review and share on your social media. Because could you imagine if everyone in your life really got it together? Remember, own it now, so you can really own it later.